Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's WeConnect International webinar. My name is Maggie Berry, and I'm the Executive Director for WeConnect International here in Europe, and I'm delighted that you've joined us for today's webinar, Building a Global Brand. Our presenter today is Sarah Penn. She is CEO of Outstanding Branding, a WeConnect International certified women's business enterprise whose mission is to deliver an outstanding experience to everyone who orders promotional merchandise. Outstanding Branding are well positioned to offer not only global promotional merchandise services to corporate clients, but also a personal and localized service to all. In today's webinar, Sarah is going to be explaining why they took the step of opening offices in New York and in Amsterdam. And she's going to be sharing some of the obstacles and opportunities that they encountered along the way. To keep background noise to minimum, everybody's on mute, so please do use the chat functionality if you want to ask any questions, and there'll be time for discussion and Q&A at the end. Sarah's probably going to talk for about 30 minutes or so just now. The session is being recorded, so you will be able to listen back to it again. So thank you for joining us today. So Sarah, thank you very much for presenting for us today. It's over to you, and I'm going to just push on to your first slide, and just let me know when you want to move the slides, and I'll do that for you. But thank you very much, Sarah. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maggie, and thank you for everyone who has dialed in to listen to me. Hopefully, I can share some of the experiences that we've had, and you'll find it useful. So, as Maggie said, I'm going to talk to you about building a global brand. So if we go to the next slide, please, Maggie. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about what to expect. I am going to take you on a journey, an exciting, magical journey across continents, across seas, across the entire globe. I'm going to explain why we decided we wanted to cross borders and go global. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the challenges that we faced and how we overcame them or failed to overcome them sometimes, in the hope really that if anybody is thinking of going international or crossing boundaries, then perhaps you can benefit a little bit from our experience, learn a bit about what's involved, and hopefully not make some of the same mistakes that we did. So next slide, please. The first thing really is why we decided to go global. And that's a question that Maggie mentioned. We have an office in New York and also in Amsterdam. People quite often ask us why we decided to become more international. And that is a question that sometimes I ask myself on a daily basis. It seemed like a good idea at the time. But really, I think that the main reason is that the world is genuinely getting smaller. We all work remotely. You guys are all dialing in to listen to me. You're not in the same room as me, but you can still hear what I'm saying. We all connect with our clients, with our colleagues via WebEx, via Zoom, various different methods. We don't actually need to be in the same room to do business and to talk to people. We also found that clients were starting to look very much for global solutions to their promotional merchandise requirements. People are getting very, very sophisticated about the kinds of promotional merchandise that they use, and if it's a global business, they want to have uniform promotional merchandise and giveaways across the globe. So that's something that our clients started talking to us about. And we also found that a lot of promotional merchandise distributors in the US were starting to partner and ask companies like us to partner with them. It was getting very, very obvious that there was a need for a global solution for promotional merchandise. And we have partnered with US distributors and looked after their clients over here in the UK and EMEA, and that can work very, very well. However, we don't like to do things the way that other people do things, so we decided not just to partner with US distributors, but to actually just do it ourselves. I mean, how hard can it be to open an office in New York, service global clients, still manage to be on the ball with the UK and EMEA business? Yeah. That was the idea. It shouldn't be that difficult, and we've made various attempts at going global and opening overseas with varying degrees of success, which I will tell you a little bit about now. So next slide, please, Maggie. Before we sort of successfully opened our offices in New York and Amsterdam, we had a couple of attempts. So going all the way back to 2011, we decided to try and open a sourcing office in China. As I'm sure a lot of you know, a lot of the majority of promotional merchandise is sourced out of China. So my business partner, Andy Thorne, who's our sales and marketing director, he flew out to China to investigate how this might work. We thought it would be great for us to be able to offer our clients better pricing and more bespoke products. And also we thought it might be something that we could then offer to other distributors and have a sort of almost like a supplier arm as well as a distributor arm. You'll see a beautiful picture of chicken feet. That's basically all there was to eat. There was a little bit of a language barrier. Not everybody spoke English, and Andy's Chinese is pretty shocking. There were cultural differences. Had to try and get by on hand gestures and Google Translate. And basically, Andy spent about 10 days getting ripped off by people left, right, and centre. And basically, by the end of his excursion, we realised that this just was not going to happen. It was just too much too soon. We were only 2 years old at the time. And one thing that became apparent is that if you want to open a sourcing office in China, you need to have $50,000 just sitting in an account to be able to open an entity. We didn't have $50,000 just knocking around when we were 2 years old, so that kind of put the kibosh on that one. Not to be deterred, however, we then investigated opening an entity in Ireland. The reason we thought about opening an office in Ireland was twofold, really. First, it would give us a sort of a foothold in Europe without having to go onto the continent. This was back in 2015. There's a lot of huge tech companies, as I'm sure you all know, who are based out of Ireland for tax purposes, so some great clients out there. And the main thing really was we met a guy who had huge amounts of experience in our industry and wanted to basically partner with us, really. He wanted to help us set up an office in Ireland and drive the whole thing forward. We had quite a lot of conversations. We went and met him several times. We looked at offices. We started putting a business plan together. And then the guy that we were talking to decided he would rather emigrate to Australia. So that one kind of fell a little bit apart as well. Again, not to be deterred, we tried Hong Kong. In 2016, we thought we would open a sales office. So rather than a sourcing office, actually looking for products, we would open a sales office so that we could service some of our larger clients across the APAC region as well. Again, we had a contact out there who was going to be the sort of the main driver in pushing this Hong Kong entity forward. But again, you know, we went backwards and forwards, and we went through a business plan and put an awful lot of time and effort into really planning this office. And then we just really felt that the person that we were talking to just didn't align with our values. Values are something that are hugely important to us as a business, and if people don't fit in with those values, then we just really can't work with them. So yeah, so we had 3 attempts at opening overseas offices, and they all went horribly wrong. However, we always like to plan what we do. We always look at the risk and reward, and when things aren't right, we just move on. And 2017, we actually finally managed to successfully open an office in New York. This operation was really the longest time in the planning, and we very much built on the lessons that we learnt from our previous attempts, although we did continue to make an awful lot of mistakes as we went along as well. So the reason that we really took the plunge again in 2017 was based on one particular client, to be honest. We obviously knew that all of our clients were, or the majority of our clients were starting to look at global solutions. But if we skip back a bit to 2009, when we just first started trading, we had one of those emails that you get and you think, really, what should I do with this email? It was basically didn't even have a proper email signature set up. It was just a guy in America saying, can you send me samples, catalogs and prices on all of these products? We're an American company and we're looking to move into the UK and Europe. And as I say, it looked pretty dodgy, to be honest, but we were about 4 months old and chasing absolutely every bit of business that we could go for. So we invested 50 quid, got a sample pack together and sent it over to this guy in the States. And turns out he'd emailed probably 10 or 12 companies and in the UK, and we were the only people who actually got back to him. And I'm very glad that we did, because they became our biggest spending client for the next 4 years, spending a good 6 figures with us and still spend with us today. So it was definitely a gamble worth taking. And we really, as a company, we pride ourselves on the service that we give. With a company name like Outstanding Branding, you can't do half measures. It's got to be the absolute best all the time. As I say, we probably really set ourselves up with a company name with outstanding in it, because you really cannot slip at all. Sorry, Maggie, can you move on to the next slide? Apologies. We've got a beautiful picture of New York there. So this particular client kept asking us, we looked after them so well in the UK and EMEA, they kept saying, please will you look after us in the US as well? You know, we spend $500,000 in the US, we'd love you to look after us, you do such a great job. And we kept saying no, because again, we don't want to let them down really. We had no supply chain, we had no systems, we had no procedures, no processes, we had no people. So we kept saying, you know, no, we'd love to, but we don't want to do a bad job, so we'll just say no. However, as the years went by, we thought, well, you know, this is actually a huge opportunity. So in 2015, we, myself and Andy, went to the biggest promotional merchandise trade show in the US, and we did what we do best, which was making an impression on the right people in our own special way. And we really got to know some fantastic people and a fantastic supply chain. It also so happened that our warehouse partner that we use in the UK also opened a warehouse in the US as well. So we were able to look at holding stock for clients. And basically from there, we realised that we actually could open an entity and look after this client. And if we go to the next slide, as I mentioned earlier, how hard can it be? The answer is very, very, very hard. We had some challenges straight off. The first one being that our lovely client, who spent $500,000 a year and had signed a contract with us, had their budgets cut and stopped spending overnight. That was a huge challenge. All the plans that we had were based around, and all the expenditure were based around this revenue that just disappeared. It was extremely stressful, and we also had a bit of a challenge with people. So we had a fantastic sales manager in the UK office, and he was interested in moving over to New York to head up the sales office over there. Great guy, fantastically driven, would have been an absolute dream to run this office. He's actually from the Midlands, and he was quite happy to say that probably being in New York is the only time that his accent was actually a benefit to him. And we spent about a year, again, building a business plan, putting in place how it was going to work, how we were going to reward him, looking at apartments, looking at visas, putting various bits and pieces in place so that he could move over there and help to drive this business forward. However, he then, at the last minute, said, I've changed my mind, because I would have to marry my girlfriend to take her with me, and I don't want to marry my girlfriend, so I'm not going to go. So basically, they're now engaged, by the way, just to really rub salt into the wound. The global vision really just crashed overnight. It just really felt like it was falling apart at the seams, like all our other attempts. However, you can't sit and cry. You have to look at the plan, change the plan, adjust the plan. and keep going. So if we can move on to the next slide. We did eventually have some success, I'm very, very pleased to say. We did retain that client through the lean periods where they weren't spending, and they are now spending again, which is fantastic, and they're very, very happy with the service that we're giving them. We've got a fantastic sales team now in the US, local US people, and a production team out there. It's now becoming profitable, which is fantastic, because we probably, I like to call it invested rather than lost. We invested about £250,000 overall getting that business up and running. So now we're starting to recoup that investment, which is the accountant is very happy about, and I have to say, so am I. And it's just, it's an absolute joy now. It's, as I say, it's self-sufficient. We're working very, very well as a global team. So we look after clients who are based in America and based in the UK, and our UK and US sales teams speak daily on the best way to look after those clients. And it's, as I say, it's allowed us to offer a global solution to our clients, and it means that we can compete with any distributor, whether they're bigger than us, and they're not obviously better than us, but there are a lot of much bigger companies out there than us offering a global solution, but we can actually compete with them on that level. So if we can move on to the next slide, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our Amsterdam venture. I know we're probably all a little bit fed up with hearing the B word, but unfortunately I'm going to use it. Brexit. Our clients were asking us, what's your plan for Brexit? What happens? You know, how are you going to move goods around? You know, a lot of our UK-based clients have offices overseas on the continent, and people were starting to get nervous and wanted to make sure that we were going to be able to deliver a seamless service. We still don't know how it's going to affect us whenever it happens, but again, you just have to look at what's going on and just do your best to come up with a plan. So our plan was to open an office on mainland Europe. The idea being that we can then buy and sell in euros. A lot of our suppliers are based in Europe or have European entities. We can still trade seamlessly with them, and crucially, we can still move goods around, and we hopefully will not have the customs paperwork and headache by trading through a European entity. And we used our experiences of our previous efforts of trying to open international offices to help us decide which country to choose to open in, and we picked the Netherlands. A couple of reasons for that. Firstly, they don't need $50,000 in the bank. They are very happy to open an entity without you having to show a huge investment into the country. It's only a 40-minute flight from London City Airport. And if we can go on to the next slide, I will leave you to draw your own conclusions as to some of the other benefits of having an office in Amsterdam. And has this been a success? Well, we've turned over about €500,000 in the first year. So what we really did is looked at the threat of Brexit and turned it into an opportunity, built on what we learned to be able to open an office a little bit more painlessly than it had been in the past. So next slide, please, Maggie. I'm going to move on to talk a little bit about the challenges. I've touched on some of them, but just to really give you a good grounding in things that crop up that you may not be expecting when you're opening offices in different countries. I've split them into three broad areas. So the first one is, next slide, please, Maggie, financial. It's probably no surprise to any of you to learn that setting up a new office in a new country can be quite expensive. You're not fools. Everything costs money, and you know that. But there are some sort of financial impacts that we hadn't foreseen. For example, in the US, the salaries are roughly double what they are in the UK for an equivalent role. It probably makes sense because they actually happily spend $8 plus tax plus 15% tip on a coffee every morning. They need to earn the money, but we just didn't really anticipate how much we were going to have to pay people to do the same jobs. It sounds a bit silly when you say it, because we probably should have really looked into that, but we didn't. So we found that out the hard way. Obviously, as I say, not only the investment in actually opening the entity and setting up an office, there's the travel, there's the accommodation, there's the food, everything costs money. I think the biggest thing in terms of finances that really, really impacted us hugely was, as I mentioned, the client that was supposed to spend didn't spend. But this all coincided with something that happened in the promotional merchandise industry in the UK, whereby one of the very big distributors went into administration and was bought out by an American company, and the American company that bought them did not honour any of the supplier debts. And estimates vary, but when this distributor went into administration, the figure seems to be about £3 million was lost by our UK supply chain overnight. That's a huge amount of money. It was a very, very difficult time for our suppliers, and that made it very, very difficult for us, because just at a point where we were spending lots of money getting the US entity up and running, getting the office up and running without the income that we were anticipating, and as I say, making a huge investment. And we really needed to be able to rely on our supply chain in the UK for bigger credit balances, bigger credit limits, and increased payment terms, just at a time where, understandably, they were starting to get a little bit nervy because they'd all just lost a huge amount of money. It was a very, very difficult time. It really impacted our cash flow, having to invest in the US, and it all got a bit scary, and I would not like to go back there. And I think my low point was when one of our key suppliers rang me as I was walking home from the station one day to ask me how much my house was worth and how much money I had left on my mortgage, because that was going to depend on whether he was going to continue to extend us any credit at all. That was quite a low point. But again, what we decided to do was look at it creatively and think, okay, how we need to deal with this. We need to meet this head on. So we did something I don't think anybody in our industry has done, which was we invited our top 20 suppliers into our offices and opened our books to them. We showed them absolutely everything that was going on. We showed them our projections, we showed them our cash flow forecast, and we really had to kind of resell the concept of outstanding branding to our suppliers. They, as I say, they were very, very nervous. They were all worried that more people were going to go bust, that we were going to lose more money, and we had to really be quite bold and, as I say, resell ourselves. Unfortunately, every single one of those suppliers did believe in us. They appreciated the transparency and actually saying, yeah, things aren't great, but this is what's happening, this is why, and this is what we're doing about it. And they all supported us through that really, really, really difficult time, which was quite lucky, to be honest, but also really heartwarming to see that our industry pulling together to make sure that we could continue trading. So financial is always a challenge. If we move on to the next slide, another thing that's not going to surprise anyone is people. People don't always do what you want them to do. So I mentioned about our sales manager who decided he didn't want to move to America, the guy who was going to open our Ireland office who decided to move to Australia. People just don't do what you expect. And again, you all know that. Having the right advisors as well, when we talk about people, if you're opening an office somewhere else, you don't know the ins and outs of their tax laws, of in the US, their healthcare system, payroll, tax, banks, visas. All of those things cost money, and finding the right people is absolutely imperative. So what we did was we joined an organisation called British American Business, who, as you can probably guess, support organisations who trade on both sides of the Atlantic. They linked us in with a lot of other businesses, and we made some great connections with companies who understand the challenges that we're going through, and that's been hugely, hugely beneficial. We have met pretty much everyone that we deal with in terms of supporters and advisors, we met through that organisation. So if you are going to open up in a new region, I hugely recommend finding the right networking group. Just can't overestimate how important that is. One of the other challenges with people was that as Andy and I were focusing on the US business and trying to get that up and running, we really needed a team back in the UK to look after the domestic business. And we realised that the management team that we had and still have were just not experienced enough to be able to keep the home fires burning. They're a very young management team, very, very enthusiastic, very, very skilled, but just didn't have enough experience. And so what we did was invested in internal and external training. We have a business coach who comes in and works with them all on their mentoring them and working on their strengths and the challenge areas or development areas, I believe we call them. And they've all, I'm very pleased to say, all sort of really stepped up to the challenge. And now Andy and I go to the US 1 week every month, and we can confidently leave the US business in their hands. But again, don't underestimate the importance of having people looking after your bread and butter business. And we move on to the next slide. The third sort of big challenge area is time. Everything takes longer than you think. And again, I feel like I'm probably preaching to the converted here. But as an example, it took just over a year to open the entity in Amsterdam. It shouldn't have done. There was absolutely no reason why it did. They thought it would take about 4 to 6 weeks, but just nothing happened in a hurry. They obviously very relaxed, laid-back people. It took absolutely forever. Another sort of factor about time is time difference. Again, not exactly earth-shattering news, but America is 5 hours behind. Until we had enough business to warrant having a administrative team out in the US, it meant that our lovely UK admin team were absolutely thrilled to be offered the opportunity of working from 2 in the afternoon till 10 at night to make sure that the US orders were being processed in a timely manner. Fortunately, again, they understood. They were excited to be part of a growing global business, so they did do that. But there was about 3 or 4 months until we could afford somebody in the US to actually take on all that administrative order processing work, and it had quite an impact on the office here. So if we move on to the next slide, that's a little bit about outstanding branding and what we've done and why we've done it and how we've done it and some of the challenges and successes we had. What can you guys who've kindly dialed in to listen, what can you guys do? Can you get some benefits of moving outside your comfort zone? I think the biggest takeaway really is looking for threats and turning them into opportunities. So where we looked at Brexit, it's given us a new market and a new revenue stream. It's also going to make life a lot easier post-Brexit in terms of paperwork, and gives us a great excuse to fly over to Amsterdam every now and again, which is always nice. And I think it's important to think creatively. Creativity is one of our core company values. But always think creatively about what are your boundaries? Why are they there? What else could you be doing? Is it do you need to open internationally? Could you just open another office in the north of England or Wales, or just think about what are your boundaries, why are they there, and how you can challenge those boundaries. Although having listened to some of the pain that we've been through, you probably really don't want to do any of those things. Maybe you think you're probably just going to stick with doing what you're doing, and that's great too. You don't, you just need to look and always challenge your own thinking. I think that's. I did want to touch a little bit on some of the cultural differences as well, just to entertain you guys. They don't understand us in America. They honestly, they genuinely haven't got a clue what we're saying half the time. And for us, we need to be really aware of that when we go over there. And we have to remember to ask the check and not the bill, and ask where the elevator is and not the lift. Remember that whereas we have the Royal Mail that delivers the post, they have the postal service that delivers the mail. Honestly, the confusion, I actually had to ask for water in Spanish because they didn't understand my accent. I don't even speak Spanish. My guess at Spanish was more comprehensible than my English accent. it makes it so much fun. It really does. And the American people are just wonderful, enthusiastic people, very, very different from us Brits, but it's been a real eye-opening experience over the last year or so, spending so much time in America. So if we can go on to the next slide, before we move on to the Q&A section, I just really wanted to recap in conclusion, the world really is getting smaller. Despite the cultural and language differences that we've experienced, as nations, we are all closer than ever. I would really say that not only is crossing boundaries fun, exciting, challenging in a good way, and financially rewarding, I think it's actually becoming closer than ever to becoming a necessity. So I would urge, as I said, everyone to look at their own businesses and think what opportunities there might be for expanding beyond your current boundaries. And that's all I have to say. If I can invite any questions and invite Maggie back to compare.
Brilliant. Sarah, thank you so much for sharing the ups and the downs. Actually, that things don't just happen overnight, and I know often things kind of make it look like things have just happened in a few months, but actually there's been a lot of hard work and going on in the background. I've had a few questions come through on the chat box, but also a couple of questions that had come in when people were registering for the webinar. So I'm going to start with those ones first, and it was about actually looking at the US, so not around the European stuff, but when you were launching in the US, did you make any changes to your brand? Or I'll start with that.
No, it is. We have a very strong brand in the UK. It's quite well recognised, and we didn't have the budget. To be perfectly honest, we wanted to keep things as lean financially as we could. And the Americans, despite not being able to understand a word we say, do love the Brits in general. I'm sure there are exceptions, but I think just staying true to ourselves, keeping our core values, keeping our colourful brand being British was the way we decided to go.
Great. Okay, thank you. And then I do sometimes wonder, we've done previous webinars, maybe in the American market where obviously they are speaking English, whether it's maybe some of the brand stuff isn't as important as maybe looking in, I don't know, maybe like Asia Pac or different regions. A couple of questions which are related to hiring staff. Somebody said, like, how did you hire staff for your office in the States? And then somebody's actually asked, how did you go about finding them locally? What did you go about it?
Good question. I mentioned people being a challenge, and getting the right people and good people, as you all know, is one of the biggest challenges to any business. We just networked and advertised. There's a couple of promotional merchandise industry job boards, and that's pretty much what we did. There's no magic solution, and it's difficult. We did talk to recruitment consultants. Again, they charge an absolute fortune, and we just didn't have the budget for that either. So we had to, a little bit of job boards, Monster, that kind of thing, and just trial and error, as unfortunately it often seems to be.
And did I hear you say that you go over to the States once a month?
Yes, 1 week every month.
For a week every month. So even on an ongoing basis, you yourself have are making quite a big commitment in terms of being there and supporting the office there.
Yeah, it's important. If we're going to offer a global service, it really needs to be a global company, and we want the US team to feel as supported as the UK team. So we myself, as I say, and Andy go out 1 week every month. Our sales manager goes out occasionally as well to do some training and just help them feel part of the company, really.
Great. Wow. Okay. Super. Thank you. And then I'm just going to check back on these other questions, and then I'm going to hold that one to the end. And so Noreen's asked a question around to do with the values, and you mentioned about your own company values and how in some of those early days when you'd had conversations and then realised that the values weren't aligned. Noreen, I'm interested in how manage values in different markets and overseas markets, and whether that's had any impact on your business culturally.
Yeah.
Maybe whether, Noreen, I'm not sure whether you mean actually whether it's changed the culture of the business in the UK as well. But yeah, any insight into how you've managed values?
Values are really just so key to our business. They came about a few years ago as we were growing as a business, and we're getting to sort of 12, 15 people. We're about 25 strong now. And we really, myself and Andy, really felt like we just seem to be getting involved in everything, and everyone's coming to us with decisions, every decision they need to make, and how do we scale? So again, we worked with our fantastic business coach, and she presented the idea of values. The idea being that once we've defined what our core company values were, we can delegate a lot more decision-making and responsibility to people. What we say is, so long as you are making a decision that aligns with our values, it's not a wrong decision. It might not be the one I would have made, it might not be the one Andy would make, but it's not wrong. It's just a different decision, and if it aligns with the values, then we're happy with that. And the values really run through everything we do. So our values are respect, understanding, creativity, and professionalism. And we review to the values. We make sure every month, for example, we have a colleague of the month. The whole team gets to vote for a colleague, and they have to vote for which colleague has made a big impact in their life, and they have to align it to a value. So, they'll vote for so-and-so who demonstrated professionalism by doing X, Y, and Z. So we really make sure that we do an awful lot of things to make sure that the values are core to the company, because they are just hugely important to us.
And did opening either of the other offices, did that have any impact on those? Did you change anything, or did it?
No, it just helps to really get a cohesive cultural feel across the company, so everybody knows that those are the values. They've worked with them in the US, exactly the same as they do here. So again, it means that we're giving a sort of despite being on two different sides of the Atlantic, we are giving the same experience to our clients wherever they are.
Great. Okay, great. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And then I had a couple of questions. You talked about the importance of having an advisor, and this is in relation to looking at the US office. And then I'd written down a question like, did you pay them? But then you said that you joined the British American Business Association, and I hadn't heard of that. And I just wondered did you end up kind of paying for somebody to be, to kind of advise you about stuff, or were you able actually, after joining that organization, able to get kind of advice informally through the network? I was just interested, because I think having somebody on the ground, you can kind of go, yep, this who's looking out for you, and kind of go, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, this is what you don't do, I think is quite...
A little bit of both. So through British American Business, we met the people who do our payroll, we met our solicitors, we met our accountants, but we also met just some really great people who like to help us out. There's a couple of guys who actually work in insurance, but they get all their business through referrals and networking, and they just seem to know everybody. So there's a guy, Paul, who's actually an English guy who's been living in the States for 25 years. If I think, so we recently rented an apartment because we're spending so much money in hotels. We rented an apartment, and so we need to get furniture. Just ring up Paul. Where's the best place to go for furniture? Because he knows where the cheap shop. He knows. Honestly, he just knows everyone, and that's just something he does because he knows that we'll refer business and people back to him. And that's how it works.
Yeah. Okay. So a bit of both then. I mean, that the organisation, I say I haven't come across them, but they sound like they would be helpful, certainly for a US adventure. So if anybody's got any more questions that they want to ask Sarah, please do use the chat function. I've just got a couple more. So Noreen, thank you for your questions, but if anybody else would like to ask any, please do use the chat function. So one of the questions that and it's kind of related a little bit to mine, somebody had asked on the sign-up questions, like, what do you wish you'd known? And again, this is related to the US. What do you wish you'd known before launching in the States?
Oh, they don't know what a kettle is. They honestly
Okay.
they make awful tea.
They do.
It's
Yes,
just horrendous.
quite right.
That was a big blow. I actually have a travel kettle now. It's like a little collapsible one that I take with me. What do we wish we knew before launching? That's a very, very good question. I think just how much hard work it was going to be. We're very, very kind of can-do sort of people and like to take challenges head on and just go for it. And just honestly didn't anticipate how much work, how many challenges, finding the people, finding the offices, just everything was harder than we thought it was going to be.
Fine. Fair enough. I can understand that from from many of the women-owned businesses within the WeConnect network when they've talked about different places they're going and the level of commitment they make. And I know for some business owners, they've actually gone out and located themselves in different regions of the world while they get things set up. They may say, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to try and do the travel thing, but I'm going to go and really do it. What would you say? Because I know often when we talk about this, it's often about the challenges and the difficulties. What's been the most fun? What have you enjoyed the most about going international?
I think the people, meeting so many different people, different types of people. It's just been, as I said, just eye-opening how different the culture is. It's just been a lot of fun meeting a lot of different people and doing a lot of networking in the pub, as every British person should do. I think that meeting people has been a huge amount of fun.
Brilliant. And would you do it again in another location, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Australia next. We've got a few takers in the UK office here asking us when we're going to open an Australian office that they'd happily go and man for us. But yeah, absolutely. It's hard work and it's challenging, but it is an awful lot of fun, and it stretches you as well as a person, which is always a good thing.
Excellent. So I'm just going to check. Does anybody else have any more questions that they'd like to ask Sarah? I've got one more, but if you do have any more questions, please do use the chat functionality and share it there. If not, I'm going to ask my last question. Do you have, I don't know, one or two top tips that you would say, if a business was considering going over, opening an office or going overseas, that if you don't do anything, do this or don't do this? Are there any?
I would.
You're like, this is key.
I would definitely say find the right networking group. Our business is all about people. We don't, as a company, manufacture anything. We literally have the people we buy from and the people we sell to. It's all about people. And I would say find the right networking group, because it just makes life a whole lot easier if you've got the right people to talk to. And even asking stupid questions like, where's the best place to get great pizza around here? The right people make a huge difference. So find the right group.
Right. And do you mean, so British, say for example, British American business, or did you use any of the services provided by the Department for International Trade or anything like that?
No. I mean, we obviously referred to various websites like that just to get some basic information, but as I say, it's all about people. So speaking to the right people to get the information is what's made us successful.
Perfect. Great. Okay. I haven't got any more questions that have come through on the chat box to me. So certainly I will share. Sarah's already agreed there, so I will share Sarah's contact details with you on the follow-up notes. If you do have any more specific questions or want to ask anything else, I'm sure Sarah would be happy to kind of share some more insight. But Sarah, thank you so much for sharing that. I know, as I say, it's encompassed in just a short presentation, but this is many years of experience of kind of looking at this and looking at different locations before going, right, we are ready, and now actually being able to kind of see reap the rewards and see the benefits and have that international team and be able to kind of deliver for your clients in multiple locations. So I very much appreciate you sharing your story with us. So a big thank you to you for today, and thank you to everybody else for dialing in. And I say we will be sharing the recording And I will share Sarah's contact details so you can get in touch and ask any more questions if you would like. But Sarah, a big thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.